Today we run the Speech Blank Out Clinic, and we have Ian Scott with us. Ian is a Rethink Retail Top 100 influencer, and he focuses on understanding the shifting retail landscape. So welcome, Ian.
Thank you very much for having me, Leonardo. I appreciate it.
Before we jump in the session, let me explain to the audience what is a clinic. So in a clinic, I work one-to-one with the speaker to improve one specific aspect of their talk. It's either existing talk or in preparation. We can work on idea generation, why you do it, what message, what CTA, first drafting, finalizing a draft into a full script, getting ready to deliver it on stage, final touches just a week or so before an event, or even on-stage problems, which is what we're going to touch on today. Yeah. This series of Wednesday clinics, in this series, the clinic is public, which means that everybody can attend and watch. And Ian was kind to allow us to do it in public to help other leaders to learn from his experience. But I'm doing this exactly as I would do in a private session. So again, welcome, Ian. Thank you for being with us. Let me put you on spotlight.
Oh dear.
And you are spotlight for everyone. Great. So Ian, we met a week ago or so after you posted about something that happened to you. Do you want to tell us briefly what was that? What happened?
Yes, I was invited to give a TED talk on the 14th of January, so just over 2 weeks ago in Kingston upon Thames. And I decided to stick to a subject close to my heart, which is why the physical store isn't dead, which is something I am passionate about and I cover in my professional role as a retail consultant. So the interesting thing was I was given an option to use slides in support of my speech or not. And I chose not to use slides because, to my mind, whenever I'd seen memorable TEDx talks, they were just someone standing there and talking. Now, I have always used slides in my professional presentations. I work in the world of retail, which is very visual. So I use them as a prompt, and I will then talk around the image on the screen. So I chose not to, and I curated a speech which was 17 minutes long. I was given an 18-minute sort of maximum, and it equated to 8 pages of text that I created as a document. So I went through the process of learning these 8 pages like an actor would learn a script, and it was hard work. I have a terrible memory, as my wife will confirm, and we sat down and for a whole week, I've been learning it. I had an audio copy of it that I was playing in my car when I was driving, and I was starting to learn. And the week before the speech, I sat down, and for 40, 50 hours through the week, we were rehearsing the script. And so my wife had a printed copy, and I was pacing up and down in my lounge, and she'd go, "No, that's wrong, start again." And I would swear, and I would start all over again. But by the Saturday, I would spent 12 hours rehearsing on the Saturday. At 10:30 at night, I got to the point that I ran through the whole 8 pages correct, with no mistakes. Sunday morning, I got up early to drive down to London, and I recounted it 4 times in the car as I was driving down. So I have memorized the speech. I was nervous about giving a TEDx talk, but not as in stage fright nervous. It's a big thing. But I'm used to talking on stages with an audience that big. And I'm also used to talking about the subject because I do it in my life. And so the thing that got me nervous was memorizing the words. So in the build-up, and the Mark has just joined on the call, was the first person giving a talk there, which was wonderful to watch him do it. He was being a virtual friend of mine, and it was great to see him go on stage and start the process. Mark gave this first speech, and I was the 4th one, and the last one in the first group before there was a break for lunch. And as he went through the other presenters, I was getting more and more anxious about forgetting the words, and I was pacing up and down outside, and then I was getting hold of my script and reading it again. And I got really worried, going, I'm not going to remember this. I'm not going to remember this. And the way I visualized the speech, it was in the 8 pages. So I walked on stage and I had some props where I had a shopping basket and I was taking items out of a box and put them in the basket, making little funny comments like toilet rolls, remember trying to buy one of these during lockdown and things like that. And I went through the first 3 pages fine. And then in my mind, I turned over to the 4th page and it just blanked. There was nothing. And while I'd been revising the week before, I get the words wrong. I get the wrong page. You know, I was, so it wasn't about knowing the words, it was about putting them in the right order. And I stood there on stage and my mind was completely blank. I couldn't even think of the 6th page or the 8th page or even the 1st page. There was nothing there. And I stood there and I sort of stared at that red circular carpet going, well, this is a bit unusual. And it was odd because I stayed calm. I didn't panic. I stayed calm and I smiled and I went, it's gone. It's absolutely gone. And as I paused, the audience, you know, as anyone that's been to a TED Talk will know, are amazing. And they gave me a round of applause. And people going, you've got this. You know what you're doing. And my wife was calling things out. And one of my work colleagues was calling it, talk about this, talk about that. And when I stood there going, I can't, there's nothing. And then I made the fatal mistake. I just started to talk. And I just started talking, pulling words out of the air about, and I fumbled around for about 2 minutes talking gibberish about retail that made no sense. And then I stopped and I just looked at the audience and I went, my wife's going to kill me. She spent all week helping me learn this, and she's going to kill. In fact, she was in tears in the audience. I found out afterwards. She was like living it, dying it with me. And I laughed, and it was really because I sat there and went, right, this amazing professional high profile speech has gone. And I laughed and went, what am I going to do? And then Liam, the organizer, came on stage with his laptop with one of the original drafts of my speech on it, because I'd emailed it to him about a month before. And so he showed me his laptop, and it was an Apple Mac, and I'm used to PC. So it took ages to learn how to scroll. You're supposed to press with 2 fingers. So I started playing with the audience, going, this is so, I can't believe this is ridiculous. It's so counterintuitive. And they started to laugh along with me. And the speech was there, and I was scrolling through and going, well, that's not in the speech anymore. That's not, oh, there's a bit. And I looked at the audience, so I know this bit, I know this bit. And then holding his laptop, I then continued the speech. But it was so difficult to be cohesive because I'd read a section and then you go down to another bit and I was going, well, that's not in the speech. And I'd lose my flow. And again, my brain was still not kicking in, even though the words were on the page. I'd read the first word and I could ignore the laptop and go through 3 paragraphs. But then I look down and go, well, that bit's not gone. And then the brain blanked off again and I'd scroll through. And then I clicked something and then another document appeared on the page. And I went, oh, I can't see the page now. Something else has appeared. And again, the audience laughed. And then there was a ping on it. And I turned and went, Liam, you got an email. So I was just joking along about the ridiculousness of the situation. And I scrolled through and eventually managed to get to the end. I paraphrased a couple of bits, but I managed to probably give about 80% of the speech I wanted to give, despite there being the blank out and a bits all over the place. I missed out taking out one of my products from the basket, but I finished and got probably the biggest round of applause of the whole day, because the audience are like that, God bless them, and they were wonderful. And Ali, who was the host of the day, came on, and she was awesome. She had a set question she was going to ask me. She forgot that, and she just started talking about the experience, and it was wonderful. And so it was a really, I quite enjoyed how I coped with the absolute mess, but I would rather the mess hadn't happened in the first place, if that makes sense. So that was my TEDx experience.
Wow. Yeah. Well, you had a full TEDx experience plus something.
Yes.
And that's very interesting. Actually, the reaction that you got from the audience is exactly the reaction you would expect from any TEDx audience, any decent TEDx audience, at least. I don't know if there are bad ones. I had in my TEDx, which I organized, we had similar stuff happen, and it's exactly the reaction that we got from the audience. You got it. Don't worry, we know that you did it, and so on. So, and that's great. And well, shame that it didn't help, or at least probably it helped you to be positive about it and to be still like active and do something, even if your brain was totally unresponsive,
Yes.
as
Yeah,
you.
I was pleased with how calm I remained, because I could have gone to pieces easily. You know, there's so much anticipation and pressure. I told everyone in the world I was giving this talk, and as I was sat there going, well, this isn't going to look very good in the video, you know, but I blanked that, and I was just like, right, how do I get through this? What am I going to say? So I was surprised, pleasantly surprised with myself, that I was analytical about the problem rather than panic mode. But
Right.
obviously my brain, I mean, you can maybe explain it more. It's almost like my brain just went, no, we're going to shut up shop. And I knew the words were in there, my brain wouldn't let me access them. That's how it felt to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that, to be honest, we already spoke about your well, what happened.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it's slightly different from a regular clinic where I wouldn't know anything. So maybe we skip something, or maybe we repeat something that we said already, or
Okay,
that
that's
I
no
mentioned
problem.
already. But so it's one part is how the brain works. We can discuss about this, but I think what is important now is to explore how, I think at least two things: how to make sure this thing doesn't happen in the first
Yeah.
place, and what to do if it happens,
Yeah.
and be ready to face it and sort it out on the spot.
Yeah.
So from how you explained and what you told us about how you prepared it, you told me that you were preparing the night before,
Mhm.
and you were kind of exhausted.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so this, for a TED talk, for any talk that you have to rehearse and deliver by heart, so scripted,
Mm.
it's impossible. You can't
Mm.
do that. It really, it kills you. It
Mm.
kills you because you get to the day with all the nerves on and thinking, how did I do yesterday? I was so tired. It didn't go well, or it did go well, but I'm tired. As you exactly as you said.
Mm.
And this goes back to, why do we get to the point of rehearsing the night before?
Mm.
It's because typically we think it takes less time to rehearse and prepare and memorize and rehearse than what it will really take.
Yeah.
Um, when when I work with the speakers at my events, I tell them at least you have to consider at least 3 months to do all the preparation,
Yeah.
and at least half of this has to be after you have the script in place,
Right.
finalized, and working first on memorizing and then on rehearsing, which are two
Right.
different things,
Yeah.
right? So now it's like, oh, you did this wrong and you did this wrong. I would say you did the best that you you knew, particularly because you never delivered a talk, a scripted talk.
No, no, and it's a completely new format of presenting for me as well, which I should have avoided on probably the highest profile talk I'll ever give in my life. With hindsight, that's the joy. And there's Mark sat here who used imagery and storytelling and rude jokes, and his approach was wonderful because he was able to stick to it. You were in your comfort zone in the ability he was presenting in a way he normally does. And I should have done the same, to be honest.
Well, yes. Well, I would say yes and no. I really appreciate the way, the preparation that you put in creating a talk that is scripted.
Mm.
And the reason why it's scripted, a TED is scripted, is because then when you record it and you edit it, it can be used and appreciated by a wider public,
Yeah.
wider audience, because it's made for the camera in a sense, right? And
Yes.
what happens, and I saw with other speakers who decided to wing it and improvise, and people who speak in front of UN assemblies. The guy knows how to do it, and he always goes like not by heart, but improvising. And actually, I was working with him and training him and asking him, please memorize it. And he was faking it in the sessions. And in the sessions, I was asking him to deliver it as he memorized it. And he was reading. And I didn't realize it. Then on the day, he did a disaster. It was a disaster because he was interacting with the audience was laughing, the audience was loving it, but the product was not worth to be a video to show. It was a personal show between him and the audience. It was fine, but there were repetitions, there were half jokes, cracking jokes without like hoping that it will work well or land well. So I said it, in my opinion, I didn't see Mark, and I look forward to see his video. And I guess that he also prepared, and maybe we discuss it later in the Q&A, but preparing a talk, a TED Talk scripted, and doing it scripted is the best thing. You really get to a different level. So, but then what happened? What went wrong? So one thing was definitely preparation. You thought you were preparing like crazy, and you were working. You worked like 50 hours, you said.
Yeah, something like that in the week before.
Crazy amounts of hours, but all in a short time span. And that doesn't work because we need our brain, like physically, the neurons, to process it and to get it stick in our brain. And it takes time. It takes time. So we have to keep doing it for months, because in the end, if I say 3 months to prepare everything, 1 month and a half to memorize it, it's 1 month and a half all the time with this thing in your mind. And initially it will be odd, ugly, bad, and then eventually it will become part of you. And that's the first trick, is to know it perfectly well as the palm of your hand. So much so that you can stop, go off on a tangent, and then decide to come back because you know exactly what you're saying.
I mean, I find when I know something, I will, ad-lib is the wrong word, but I will phrase it differently. And I was getting to that point, certainly the first pages, because obviously I'd memorized them first. So I went over them more. And the first 2 or 3 pages, I'd be reading them, but wife was going, well, you said that differently. I go, I understand, I haven't forgotten, I just say it differently. And I will do that when I do my business presentations. So I can, when you're comfortable with it, you can go, I'm going to say that a little differently, even though it's saying the same information.
Exactly. That's the secret present at the end of this terrible part of rehearsing and suffering and whatnot. But in the end, when you know it really, that you can start at any point of the talk, any moment, and then go off and then go back, it allows you to be creative on stage. Because you're not afraid of losing track. Something that happened to you because you had a different script, and you were going, oh, but this is not in my script. But I don't know what is there in place. So this is super important. We can't do anything about this, but this is, I would say, an important learning point. But then what to do? Well, there are also other things that you mentioned that might be worth. But I would say slides help a lot. But again, people tend to use them as not your case. Well, not your case because you didn't have slides, but as an excuse not to get to that point. Right? Again, if you get to that point, you have the slides, you ad-lib, and you do whatever you want because it's your stage, it's your stuff, and you know it 100%. But then what to do to avoid blanking out?
Mm.
There are several aspects. One thing we didn't discuss this, and I guess you have it, but how clear is for you exactly the message that you wanted to get across to your audience?
The message I thought was very clear. I don't think there was any confusion in it. And I think there were probably 5 or 6 stages where I focus on different. I talk about COVID and the impact on shops. I talk about people's reaction to it. I talk about the negative media. I use several, I think 5 or 6 different examples of different retailers and how they did things. So there was a structure, there were sort of distinct chapters to areas that I was talking about. I think I talked artificial intelligence, and then just the fact that the human side of things as well, which runs through the whole thing.
Exactly. So this thing that runs through the whole thing,
yeah,
is something that it must be extremely clear in your mind. And I'm not saying that it wasn't,
no.
But it is a safe haven when you're lost.
Yeah.
Because if you manage to push yourself thinking of that, you can kind of find something to talk about.
So it's almost like an anchor that you can hold on to, is it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
right.
That makes sense.
So your anchor is your big message, the big thing that you want to convey, to get across. Yeah. And I watched your retake.
Yeah.
And it is about humans are social creatures.
Yes.
Yeah. And retail, the physical retail, is the place where human interactions happen.
Yeah.
Now, with this in mind, even if you're lost, you have something to say, right? Because then you can add lib around that.
But the interesting thing is, when I had the blank out, even that wasn't in my mind. Like I say, it was like a shutter had come down.
Yeah.
And all these words that I put in my head for a whole week, well, weeks before, to be fair, and the final week was totally focused. It's like the door was shut and the light was turned out. It was really quiet, and I found it fascinating. Because, like I say, for the whole week before, I was choosing the wrong words occasionally, but there were not a single word. And I'm going, I've worked in this world for 20 years. I couldn't even start talking about anything else, about what I did in my life. My brain just shut the door and threw away the key. It was a weird sensation, really weird sensation.
Yeah. Probably being deliberate about, so developing a mechanism to being deliberate in looking for certain small actions that will anchor us. Like, what is my talk message? Like, asking yourself that might have helped you. I guess this is one, right? Then, of course, you did engage with the audience in a different way, but that's fine. That's great. That's a way of getting out of this trouble.
It was a coping mechanism more than anything else. I couldn't walk off that stage. There's no way I was going to walk off that stage without finishing.
Yeah, just exactly.
So it's like, I've got to do something here. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you had also some other more anchors at your disposition for you, which were all the props that you brought on stage. Did you use them?
Yes, I did. I all but one. I had a toilet roll first. So the basket had some food in already. There was some crisps and a box of cornflakes and a packet of tea. And the first one was a toilet roll. And I used the strap line, soft, strong, and very, very long, which was a famous advertising strap line for one of the toilet. And I went, remember trying to buy one of these nearly 4 years ago. The second one was a box of washing powder. And I said, adds brightness to your clothes. And I had the brightest, floweriest shirt on. I'm known for flowery shirt. And so I looked at my shirt and went, well, judging by this shirt, that's a resounding success. And then that was the two I did when I remembered the script. And then when it went wrong and I recovered, the next one was Carlsberg, can of Carlsberg beer. And what I was going to say in the script was if Carlsberg did TED Talks and put it in the basket. And I picked it and went, if Carlsberg did TED Talks, and then I paused and I went, well, they wouldn't get the bloody words wrong. And I put it in the basket. So I ad-libbed that one because there's nothing else I could do. And the very last one I had was Kit Kat, but I forgot that because I was the last person before the first break. And the Kit Kat strapline is have a break. So I went, have a break, have a Kit Kat. And what I should have said was, we can all have a break in a couple of minutes when I stop going on about shops, and put it in, and then I'd finish the last 2 minutes of the speech. But I didn't get to deliver that one. So that was the props. And I knew what I had to say about them, bizarrely. And I'm wondering if psychologically the act of picking the product up triggered a response. I suppose a little bit like a slide would have triggered comments as well.
Yeah.
So when I picked one of those up, I knew what to say. When I wasn't holding one of those props, I didn't know what to say at all. It was really interesting.
So you used the props after blanking out.
Yeah, I could have just gone to the next prop, picked it up, and then
Okay.
it may well have then triggered the words that would have followed on, which could have been a way of breaking through that blankness, I suppose.
Yeah. So what I'm suggesting here is to have as many anchor points that you can go back to and use when there's nothing else, because these will make you remember. But then before this, you need to create. We need, as speakers, we need to be able to create kind of an automatic response to do this, to look for props, to look for anchor points, which when we are just blank, we can't even think of. So we need to create this automatic mechanism. And we also need to create an automatic mechanism to kind of slow down our mind. Because you said that it was blank, but in a way your mind was rushing.
Yes, it was. I understood it was a psychological reaction. I hadn't forgotten the words. My mind wasn't letting me remember them. And it was a reaction to the stress of me worrying about forgetting. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm worried I'm going to lose the words. And my brain went, right, well, let's remove all the words. And now you stand on that stage and see how you cope. It was almost like my evil twin playing games on me. It's how it felt.
Yeah. So to regain control, we need to be able to recenter at any point, at any stage. And this is something that I suggest all speakers to do, and to make it kind of automatic for us, so that whenever we're in trouble, it automatically happens. We don't have to think of it, because we're not able to think, but it automatically happens, which is a series of techniques to recenter. And if you want, you can go through these. It's nothing about your talk now, because it's gone. It happened. But for the next time, these are very useful techniques. So there is one interesting scientific foundation to this, which is our fears and our fears basically guide us to do the silly things that we do. You are somehow driven by fear of not remembering all the stuff, fear of blanking out. And fears live in a certain part of the brain. We don't go into the anatomy, but they live in a certain part of the brain. Whereas creative thought lives in another part of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex and other parts. Okay, so far so good. But so what? A very interesting aspect is that all physical sensations, all the 5 senses, activate the same areas of the brain as the creative parts. So when you're lost, if you have learned to do some physical action that activates the right part of the correct part of the brain, you can really slow down, recenter, and get again your brain working.
So you can almost trick your brain back into lifting up that barrier and
Exactly.
allowing you back in, because you're activating the same parts of the brain by activating one of those senses.
Exactly.
Okay.
And, yeah. And this is something that you've always heard everywhere about sensing your breath,
Mm-hmm.
like feeling you breathe in and out, and your lungs expanding, or your belly expanding, or feeling the air coming through your nostrils.
Yeah.
So feeling some, but one specific sensation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if it's air through the nostrils, it's all here. What
Mm-hmm.
happens here when I'm breathing? And you put all your attention on that. And I say, it's not just breathing. Breathing is some like universal example, but you can focus on the weight, your weight, the weight of your feet on the ground.
So is this almost like a distraction technique?
Well, yes, correct. It's a distraction technique from the fears.
Yeah.
Because you will never shut down or shut off the fears. They will be there.
Yeah.
If you activate the positive part of the brain, the other part of the brain will be just in the background.
Yeah.
So maybe you're afraid or you're nervous, but you don't care.
Right.
When all the energy, all your thinking goes into like is fueling that fear, you're lost.
Yeah.
So it's tricking your brain to listen to something else, which is your senses.
Okay.
And by doing this, you also regain that kind of ability to recenter and find what you want to say.
Okay. That's interesting.
Is
this almost a different version of almost like that NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming? I was taught once, pinch your fingers and imagine a really nice place. And so that if you do it enough, you pinch your fingers and it takes you to that nice place and it invokes a sense of calm or positivity.
Yes, well, in that way, you're creating connections that don't exist.
Yes.
Connection between pinching and something pleasurable.
Yeah.
In our case, you're just activating the part of the brain that makes you feel better.
Right. So it's much more simple than that. Yeah. It's just helping your brain focus on something positive rather than negative.
Yeah. And you can do it with any physical sensation. So you can focus on some image that you have in front of you and really look into the details of whatever you have, the carpet in front of you.
Yeah.
Or the noise that you hear, far noise or close noise, or the noise of your breath again, or physical sensations, as I said, or like your fingers, the ridges on your fingers when you do, and other things that maybe you don't want to do, like doing this. It's not nice when you're on stage, but there is plenty of things that you can do.
Yeah.
Everything that is a sensation, everything, literally. So we had the entire body to use to focus on one specific sensation to recenter and refocus. And actually, I did teach this to my speakers, and those who remembered to do it, they managed to regain focus. They stopped. They were, oh my God. They got some cheers from the audience, but they were like visualizing or feeling or sensing, actually. They decided to sense on something, and they regain, I'd say, consciousness.
That is brilliant. That makes complete sense. So the brain reacts in another way to the pressure. So you find the way of unlocking that with a simple technique, and that makes complete sense. That does. I suppose the challenge is it's difficult to test that because you can't simulate the pressure that creates the lockdown or the blank out in the first place. So it's very difficult to practice.
That's true. it's difficult to practice, to put in practice in when you're in trouble, but you can do it every day for 5 minutes. It's meditation. You know, why people meditate? Some people meditate because they want to push away the thoughts from their brain, from their mind. I think that this is not the right approach, because you will never push away your thoughts. Your thoughts just arise. It's just it's like a spring.
It's almost a denial, isn't it, rather than acknowledging or dealing with it. You're just trying to think they're not there.
Yeah, it happens, and actually something that you can do and you should do in this this self-awareness exercises is to be aware of what your brain is doing and call it out. Right? And this is something that you can train yourself to do every morning or whenever, and you see a thought coming and you say, there is a thought coming. I'm not interested. But this is meditation, right? Thought coming. Oh, this is a thought. It's a negative thought. I don't care. I don't listen to it. When you do it repeatedly, then you're on stage, a negative situation comes up, and you say, oh, this is my mind playing tricks on me. And actually, this is what you did.
So the awareness and the knowledge gives you the power, doesn't it, then?
Yeah. And then you can act with that actions of focusing on your senses, on one sense, on a specific sense. So it's one, recognize the enemy, and then recenter through your senses, and then the enemy is just, you're observing the enemy. You're observing the bad thought, right? So this is the I think the only technique that I would teach someone who is on stage and who needs to make sure that they don't they keep going and finish their talk.
That's a good idea. Or tell them to use slides.
Well, yes, but you're really limiting yourself with slides, because slides are anchors for you.
Yes, but I mean, I learned, like with my professional presentations, I don't put lots of words on the screen, because I realized quickly they're either listening to you or reading the words on the screen. And I can guarantee they're reading the words. And it's almost like you may as well just shut up and go, read through these, and then I'll carry on talking.
Totally,
so my presentation is always images, or it's one statement that I talk around, because I do realize slides, to me, slides are a visual endorsement of what I'm saying. They're not the subject matter, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Okay. And if they help, fine. But again, as you, I really like how you approached it, because you said, I want to do it without slides, because it can be more powerful. And that's true. Because again, as you say, we are humans. We are social creatures. And I like to hear you and watch you, see your eyes looking at me, rather than see a picture of whatever, an onion.
Well, I mean, you saw what I used with slides when I re-recorded it. It was just lots of images supporting things. A hamburger appears for 10 seconds, and Napoleon appears for 20 seconds, and things like that, because they were referenced in the talk. But I think there's a danger you end up, they almost become a crutch and a support for you. And I never want slides. I mean, with Mark, I couldn't see your screen, Mark, but I know you showed a picture with Michael Jackson at Disney, but it was almost like a reference to one part of the speech. And what
Yeah.
you know, it wasn't death by PowerPoint. And I really like that because that image was powerful in relation to a point of what was being said, but it wasn't a 40-page PowerPoint show.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite important there. I always feel if I use slides, they're endorsing what I'm saying, but the words are still the most important part. Otherwise, they're not listening to you; they're just watching a show on a screen, aren't they?
Yeah. And you can use them as a prompt for you and as a
Mm.
prompt for the audience as well.
Yes.
That's the prompt. They see it, okay, seen it, it disappears. It really forced the audience not to look at it anymore because
Yeah.
it disappears like 5 seconds off. Just the time to see it, register it with your register, record, see it with your mind and understand what is it about and connect it with what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's it. You don't need to see it anymore.
Yeah.
And you get much closer to the audience, obviously, if you are able to create an engaging talk.
Yeah.
Just a presentation without slides, it's horrible. It's like a presentation, the red presentation. It's really horrible. So let's see. What next? What do you feel is missing for your next event?
Well, interesting. Just yesterday, I gave a guest lecture at a university, and it's my first time presenting since then in front of an audience.
Yeah.
And it was weird because I wasn't nervous, but I was just like, right, am I going to get back to what I used to do? And part of me was going, right, this is interesting. You know, did the TEDx experience knock my confidence? And I sat there and went on for about an hour and a quarter, talking to this group of fashion students, and I was back in my comfort zone because I was talking about the subject and presenting it in a way I was familiar with. So that was reassuring. I was very comfortable in that environment. So the blanking out while trying to memorize a script has not affected my confidence and comfort in my normal slide-based presentations, which was a relief because I think someone will have to point a gun at my head to make me stand on a stage with a memorized script again. One because of this experience, but two, because I know normally I don't need to do it. So, you know, and I think with hindsight, you know, you don't pick the highest profile speech of your life to try something completely new and cram it a week before, you know. And I realized how stupid that was in hindsight, especially with my ability to memorize things. My wife will tell you I can't remember what day of the week it is most of the time. So trying to cram about 2,000 words into my brain was a big ask, put it that way.
Well, okay, that's a valid point. So you say you don't want to do give it another try?
I would love to do another TED Talk, but I would approach it differently. I would certainly start learning it earlier, but I probably would use some slides, even if that's a psychological comfort for me. I would use, and I sat there afterwards. Mark was first on, he used slides. The guy after him used slides, and the guy after that used slides. And then I walked on going, no, I'm not going to use slides. I'm going to give one of these super high quality, just me on stage talks. And I crashed and burned. So I would love to do it again. And like I said, the reason I re-recorded the speech was the biggest frustration was I'm very passionate about the subject and I didn't do it justice. So I would love to go back, not so much for me to do the talk right, but to tell the story properly. And that's what I would like to do is do that. But whether the problem is if you apply to do another TED Talk and I explain what happens, I would expect most organizers to run a mile going, he blanked on stage. We don't want him on our event. But maybe one of them will go, this is an interesting story. Let's give him another go. So I may well fill the form in and apply and see what happens.
Yeah, actually, two things. I don't think that a TEDx producer would think that you're someone who blanks on stage because it happened once, because they've seen plenty of speakers blank on stage. And actually, it's almost normal for anyone who's never been on a TED stage. And actually, it's really interesting to see how just thinking of being on a TEDx stage changes completely the way people look at the thing, which is
Yes.
what happened to you as well.
I did. I did a completely different style of presentation because it was TED, and I approached it completely differently. I got on stage in front of 1,000 people in my work life, and I was fine. So yeah, it was my mindset and approach and methodology were different because it was TED.
Yeah,
That's
but
true.
besides of that, yes, I appreciate that, and I think that you did the right thing in using a different approach.
Yeah.
But the idea of being on a TED stage changes people. Not
Yeah.
just the fact that they have to rehearse and memorize, and that it's a performance rather than a presentation.
Yes.
And it changes for no reason, because
No,
it's
it's
just
because it's TED. Because it's TED.
yeah, exactly.
And there's that subconscious pressure, anticipation, or whatever because of that name, that big red 3 letters sort of stood next to you on the stage. They change your mindset.
So maybe it's worth working on the mindset rather than saying, I will bring slides. You can bring slides next time. That's fine.
Yeah.
But why not work on the mindset? Why not work on...
And work on the rehearsal starting a bit earlier, maybe, as well.
No. Okay, rehearsal, yes, which is a technical issue.
Yes.
It's like technical. You just take more time and
Yeah.
spread it out. But also the mindset. The
Yes.
mindset of being on a TED stage and recognizing that it's just a fear
Yeah.
talking to us, like
Yeah.
as we said before, and it's building up your fear for no reason at all.
Yes. I mean, it was
Also,
interesting this morning because I knew we were recording this, and I was in the shower this morning, and I started going through the speech, and I rattled off the first 3 pages before I even paused, and I went, it's still in there. I stopped. I didn't blank on the 4th page like I did on the stage. I went, oh my God, it's still there. And I suppose we're all geniuses in the shower, though, aren't we? That's the problem,
yes.
because it's a casual, relaxed environment. You're on your own, but it's almost like that opposite. It's a safe space for you personally. You're on your own. No one can hear you, and so your brain releases rather than locks down. And it's almost like the full potential comes out because there is zero pressure while you're stood in the shower trying to remember things.
Yeah, and that stuff is all mindset.
Yeah, it is.
The opposite, the flip side of this coin is just
Yeah.
mindset.
Yeah,
And,
I don't think they'll let me stand in the shower to give a TED talk, though,
but you don't need
unfortunately.
a shower. That's the point. You need a different mindset.
Maybe that'll be my talk. How to get out of the shower. That'll be my next TED talk.
Yeah. Okay, so any other point that you want to discuss? Actually, this was slightly different as a clinic, because it was more of a let's talk about what went wrong and how
It's
you
a post-mortem, isn't it?
But I think that, well, there are several things that you can do to do it again successfully.
Yes.
Without the fear of failure.
Yes. And that would be interesting. If I got to do it again, the anxiety wouldn't be about a TED talk, because I've now done one. The anxiety would be about not repeating the same mistake. So there would still be that little devil on my shoulder. It'd be a different devil this time. Going, are you going to do that again? Are you going to do that again? Even though I know I would approach it using a lot more time and a lot more rehearsal, it'd be interesting if my brain would play up to that little devil going, you're going to do the same thing again, aren't you?
But then you have something to
Have the
fight
coping
back.
mechanisms.
Not even fight back, but just not even shut it down, but just not listen.
Yeah, that would be fascinating. It would be really fascinating. I mean, I would love to do it again. So I might fill in the form and see how people react.
Great. Do you have questions for Ian or for me?
Yeah.
About what happened?
I have maybe a few comments. So I know Ian for a little while.
Yeah.
So the first is, for me, life is 10% what happens and 90% how you take it, right? And I think it's admirable how you're taking it afterwards and how you're trying to cope with the situation. You know? And I
Thank
think
you.
it's one that we can all put ourselves in the place of. I mean, I'm not a native speaker, and I've been doing a lot of speeches, both the ones that are more or less memorized, because I would never memorize a whole speech, right? Exactly because I'm not a native speaker. Because what happens if I get too occupied in my mind on the exact words and the grammar, because I'm not born and raised with that.
Yeah.
Speaking in English, right? So it's one of the things you have going for you. You are an excellent speaker, right? So I think that's something that you should be aware of. For me, it was interesting that that you stopped when you came to my artifacts, right? There's the two companies that I've been working for, Carlsberg and Nestle. No, but also knowing you, you are a visual speaker to me. You're a visual kinesthetic thinker and speaker. So you're not very auditive. So you don't put a lot of emphasis on the words, right?
Yeah.
So I think the exercise that you put in front of yourself was like conquering a big mountain to you in a certain way, because you're actually trying to train a part of your brain that is not coming naturally to you.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things that, I don't know if you're doing that, maybe try to build in some very visual things in your speech, where you can really use your hands and gestures and paint a picture of the story you're telling. That might be able to help.
Well, I think that's where the props helped, because my speech coach, and she was really good, and she suggested introducing the props first of all because I was talking too fast, and I get very animated, and I'm sure Malcolm Torben will know this. You know, I build up momentum, I wave my arms around, and I talk too fast. And I felt when I did the rehearsal, I was talking slowly. And the organizer and the speech coach went, "You're talking too fast. Why don't you introduce some props? Because there'll be natural breaks to make you calm down." But they were, as you said to them, they were visual things. You know, holding up a physical product and putting it in a basket.
This is
as
what
well.
happened here, because you are a visual speaker, right? Because visuals travel faster, right? Because it's like light travels faster than sound. So they're traveling faster in your mind. And when you're speaking, one of the things that maybe you could consider, I don't know, did you do that? Did you do visualization techniques before you went on stage?
I didn't when I was preparing for this. I've used visualization techniques before, but I've never applied them to my normal presentations because I'm using slides. So they do that sort of thing for me. So
they can relax your mind, right? They can relax your subconscious mind, basically making it feel like, oh, we've been doing this shit before, right? Like Neil Armstrong, when he's making his famous speech on when he was landing on the moon, right? He'd been doing that a million times in the Lynx trainer, right?
Yeah.
So basically using visualization techniques to calm down your mind, making it feel like you've been there before. That might be one of the things you could add next time, because I think you should do it next time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You should do that. Yes.
I would love to. I would love to. I'd love to. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Torben. Actually, very interesting. Another visual anchor in your mind to stick to and to help you get through it. That's very, very interesting, and it comes from knowing you, how you work and how you think, and that's great. Thank you, Torben, for the input. And Mark, I see you're unmuted yourself as well. Do you want to say something?
Well, so I witnessed whatever we're going to describe you in speech.
Debacle. The car crash.
If I had your experience, Ian, I wouldn't have come out the next day and been as open, or the next couple of days, whatever it was, and been as open as you were. I'd have hid myself in shame. So I just wanted to say, wow, brilliant for facing up to, that issue, because I wouldn't have had the courage to. I have lots of courage to talk about some fairly unpleasant stuff, but I couldn't have done what you did. So well done. And I
Thank you.
suspect
I must say part of that is because I told every man and his dog I was giving the speech. So I had nowhere to hide because everyone was going, how did it go? How did it go? So it's my own fault for being a loudmouth and telling everyone I was about to give a speech. So I backed myself into that corner a little bit, but I just felt I have to own this situation for what it was, you know, and I just thought, hands up, you know, this went wrong and here's why. And ironically, the engagement from that post was incredible and quite emotional. You know, it was almost overwhelming, the response I got from people, and also from people that I wouldn't have expected to respond to it as well. So that in its own right was a nice little bit of therapy, because, you know, a lot of people go, well done, you're okay, you know, you'll dust yourself off. But some of the comments, you know, almost reduced me to tears, because they were incredibly supportive from people I wouldn't have expected it from. So it was a bit of therapy in its own right, I must say.
Made you almost went undercover for months. No, we couldn't approach you for a long time. But you remember I asked you when you are still rehearsing.
Yes.
Remember what I asked you, if it might be better to memorize paragraphs or sentences and
Yes.
not, because you are very focused on the words, right?
Yes, and I did post about, you know, I'm preparing, and I had a whole lot of people talking about different ways. And the problem is a lot of people going, oh, you need to do it differently. And I'm going, I can't reinvent the wheel here. There's not enough time to do this differently. But there was a lot of a lot of constructive ideas about the memorization. But I probably, there are probably techniques. I did look online about techniques for memorizing, and there was visualization was in there as well. But I was looking at it going, I'm going to have to spend too much time adapting to that technique, where what I need to be doing is plowing on. And a lot of this comes back to what Leonardo was saying. I should have started about a month before. And I was listening to my speech, like I recorded an audio, but you're driving along in busy traffic. That is not the environment to focus on the words and memorize. And I was trying to do that subliminal thing, like they often say, you know, you put a cassette on while you're sleeping and it embeds in your brain. I mean, to me, that was 10% of the learning mechanism. The rest of it, I had to stand up and talk. And I've learned this before when rehearsing big speeches. The best way to prepare is you stand up and you speak it out loud, rather, because in your head you'll jump over the mistakes and you'll tell yourself it's not a problem, because your brain will compensate for the mistake. When you say it out loud, there is nowhere to hide, because you hear yourself say it in the incorrect way. So that's what I ended up doing for that whole of that last week. But you're right, Leonardo, I should have been doing that weeks and weeks before.
Yeah. Time definitely.
Sorry.
Time planning is definitely very important.
Yes.
And defining how you memorize things. As we didn't even touch it, you mentioned it. Actually, Torben suggested, and definitely memorizing words instead of paragraphs, or paragraphs instead of words, concepts, different ways of anchoring again your delivery to something that sticks easily in your mind, that you can recall easily in your mind. So,
can I ask Mark how you went through the process of preparing for your speech? What was your technique?
My technique was so Torben, I am a natural speaker, but I have an issue. I'm a wheelchair user, and I have cog fog, short-term memory loss, all sorts of a messy brain. So I could never have memorized on a perfect day an Ian Scott a 16-minute speech. So my technique was much more around the anchoring. So I had 7 or 8 points to get through. Each bit was key-ish to the story, and I then played with the words every single time I did it. And you said about standing up and delivering the talk almost as if you had a little pretend red carpet. I practiced it 2 or 3 times in the morning, recorded it, watched it back. So probably an hour in the morning, and I spoke myself to sleep, or did it once every evening.
Okay.
That was my my techniques, but I never delivered exactly the same speech.
Right. So you memorized the 7 or 8 key points that you're familiar with, and then you just talked around them in a way because you understood the subject, like
Yes.
you may have been recounting it to someone. Yeah, that may be a better way for me to, because I could have talked around each of those 6 key topics I had in my speech. So maybe I should have just memorized 6 key topics.
Yes, and I gosh, I don't know how good it was. Everybody on the day says you're brilliant.
Yeah.
But I think I did a good 8 or 9 out of 10.
Genuinely, I thought there were a couple of bits where you paused for a moment, but then you carried on, which was absolutely no problem. And I think what helped as well, you were storytelling, personal stories about, driving Michael Jackson around when he visited Disneyland, and your infamous gear stick one, which we cannot recount on this webcast because it's rude. But, and so I think that's where that worked really, really well. You told stories.
Yes.
And they're personal stories as well. And I know in my job, I talk about the power of storytelling. And I was telling a bit of stories, but they weren't my stories. So yours was very engaging because you were talking about your own experience. And I think that's such a powerful thing. And everyone was engaged in it, which I thought was great to see.
Thank you. That was good.
Yeah.
But, and pauses, I don't think I lost it at all.
No.
So pauses are good.
Yes. Yeah, it wasn't pause like mine, which was, I don't know what to say. You paused maybe 2 or 3 seconds and then you carried on. So it was almost like a gap between the different chapters, and that's how it came across. So yeah, it's different.
Cool.
Anyway, I can't wait to see both of our videos.
Yeah.
I'm still not sure whether they'll publish my video. I did joke afterwards to Liam. I said, "Good luck editing that into a comprehensive speech." So I'm holding a laptop. I'm standing there. I'm pacing around. And then I'm not holding the laptop at the end. So I'm going to go. There's some serious special effects to make that look cohesive. So
it's going to be difficult to edit it. Possibly impossible. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm expecting them not to do it. In my mind,
a reason for you to do it again, as you said, because it's the content is worth it, and you are enthusiastic about it, and there's no reason why you shouldn't do it. And any TED event, actually, it's a positive that you run through the TED already, because you know where the difficult parts are, and you can work around them much better than some who never did it. So
and I know my speech is still in my head because I recounted it this morning. So I need to use it or lose it is probably the principle I've got to apply.
Exactly. Okay, so we need to close because we are already 4 minutes out or long. I just would like to say a few words. First of all, I hope it was useful.
Very, thank you.
For the audience, for whoever is watching this, if you want to explore having a clinic with me on your talk, you just get in touch with me on LinkedIn. There are also another few slots available for a complimentary session like this, where you agree to make it public. And of course, we can also work as a private consultation. Now, Ian, before we close, I would like to ask you one thing. How was it? So how did you feel before we spoke? How do you feel now? And how was it working with me? If you can say something.
What I like was it gave me a context and understanding, because it is difficult, because a couple of people have said to me, "So you forgot what you were saying," and I'm going, it wasn't that straightforward. I didn't forget in that sort of context. So you helped me understand the difference between how my brain behaved in that unique situation. And then you've given me some techniques which I think would make it much easier if I were to do a speech like this again. There's an approach and a methodology, starting earlier. And like you said, the difference between learning what to say and learning how to say it. And I think that was a really distinct thing, as well as the timeline, not leaving it too late. But then those techniques of focusing on breathing or the weight on your feet. And I love that because I can imagine how that would work. So this has given me quite a bit of closure about the whole experience, I must admit. So thank you for that.
Cool. Thank you. And I hope closure for the past experience and energy for the next one.
Yes.
Because I really, really want to see you on stage with that talk and smash it.
Thank you. I hope I get the chance. I'd love to have a go at it again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian.
Thank
And
you.
that's all for
Thanks
now.
for everyone coming in.
Bye.